This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. Helping you find emotional, spiritual, and physical balance. What does your future hold? It's time to find out with Psychic Suzanna.
This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. Now, you can always find us at psychicsuzanna.com or KFAB.com, where this show will be on air, up online, within 2 days. I suggest you pass it around. I suggest you listen to it again. This is a show that we've set up to help you deal with the horror that suicide is. We want to take away the horrible thoughts we have when someone commits suicide about ourselves, not knowing that we weren't prepared for it, not knowing things. Life happens, and this is part of it. Let's get prepared and do prevention and communication. And on the line, I have with me today Dr. Dave Miers. He is a counseling and a program development manager of the Bryan GH Medical Center in Lincoln. He's the co-chair of Nebraska State Suicide Prevention Coalition. Welcome to the show, Dr. Miers.
Thank you for having me.
Well, is suicide preventable?
It is preventable, yes. Suicide is the 11th leading cause of death in the United States. Roughly about 33,000 individuals a year die in the United States to suicide. That equates to about one every 15 and a half minutes, one every 16 minutes.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that strong.
It is. And it's one of those, suicide and mental illness, unfortunately, still has stigma attached to it. And it's a topic that a lot of times folks don't want to talk about. They feel uncomfortable talking about it. But the best thing we can do is talk about it. So I'm very pleased that you're having me on today to address this very important topic.
Well, there seems to be almost a hidden shame if someone commits suicide or has thought of it. And I'm not so sure that everybody at some point in their life hasn't thought of it. The difference is thinking about it and doing it. How do we understand that?
Well, I think it's important, when I said the 11th leading cause of death, when you think about teens, I'm just going to focus on teens here for a second. In Nebraska, it jumps up to the second leading cause of death. In the United States, for teens, it's the third leading cause of death.
No.
And when you say that, many people think about it, when you look at some of the research that they do with teenagers, I mean, that's the number who have ended their life to suicide, but there's a very high percentage of teens and adults who think about suicide. And it's important that we direct people to resources to help them, because what we know is that 90% of those who end their life to suicide have a diagnosable mental illness or would have been diagnosed with a mental illness, most commonly depression. And it's untreated depression that often leads to feelings of suicide, thoughts of suicide, and that intense psychological pain that individuals experience, and not knowing a way out, suicide becomes an answer in their mind.
One of the things is, and forgive me for not being more patient, but I always work with the attitude of gratitude. No matter how I am, even when I was bedridden with a broken femur, I realized I could do a lot of things. And so I always work with the attitude of gratitude. How do I know when it's just not a pity party? Because a lot of people seem to have those parties and real suicidal thoughts. I mean, is there a difference? Can we judge that?
It's important to not judge that. If there's somebody who talks about feelings of hopelessness or helplessness, or maybe even makes statements that I just feel like life isn't worth going on anymore, that we take that seriously. Anytime anybody says that, it's common to hear that people say, well, are they just feeling sorry for themselves? Like you said, is it a pity party? It's not. If somebody's saying those things, we need to take it very seriously and ask the question, are you feeling like you want to take your life? Are you feeling suicidal? The number one myth that is in society today regarding suicide is that if I talk about it or I bring it up, it's going to give somebody the idea. That's absolutely false. The best thing we can do is to ask the person directly, to bring that topic up to them and say, hey, is this how you're feeling? And to be ready for them to say, yeah, I'm serious. This is how I'm feeling. And to not judge that individual, but to be a good listener, to try to understand what that person's going through, to not leave them alone, and then to connect them with a resource, with a physician, with a counselor. If it's the person is in immediate danger, to get them to the emergency room, to get them help right away.
Okay, so just encouraging them is not the answer then, and encouraging words and things like that. That's how I approach it. That's not the answer. The answer is to listen more.
Well, the answer is to listen more. If somebody is telling you right now that I'm having these feelings, I mean, it's okay to encourage, but it's more important to be a good listener, because it's what individuals want who are having those thoughts is to have somebody understand what they're going through.
A lot of people I know and have had time with keep the same negative thoughts again and again. How do we help them? How do we bring them out of that negative area then so that it doesn't go lower into suicide? Is it a degree of negative thoughts, or is it just instantaneously?
No, generally with an individual becoming suicidal, in most cases, it's a gradual degree of many different factors. I mean, in some cases it can happen pretty quickly in terms of those thoughts coming on. But in most cases, it's a gradual thing. It could be a combination of things, depression, anxiety, breakup of a boyfriend, girlfriend, relationship loss, financial strain. It can be many different factors. But if a person hasn't reached that point yet, what we know is that there are things that we call protective factors that make it less likely that somebody is going to act out towards themselves. And one of those key protective factors is connectedness.
Connectedness,
and that is, I think, what you're talking about in terms of there's different kinds of connectedness. There's that community connectedness, connectedness maybe to your religion, your spirituality. If you're a youth, connectedness to your school. But the more connected we are, the less likely it is that we're going to act out towards ourselves, either with suicide or drugs and alcohol, any of those risk-taking behaviors. So if we can help support a person emotionally, help connect them to friends, help them develop that support system, that's going to be one of the most important protective factors we can provide.
Is there any other protective factors that we can provide?
Other protective factors would be getting that person connected to resources. So if they are, if they're feeling down and depressed, to have them go in and see somebody to see is it depression or anxiety or whatever it might be that they're dealing with, and getting treatment. Early treatment is very important. So connectedness to your counselor, to a physician, getting help for substance abuse issues, that's a protective factor. As I mentioned, the connectedness. Those are some of the most important protective factors.
Okay, if we get them connected and do it, there are some who just do it on an instant without thinking about it. Mm-hmm. As a parent, is there something I can notice and I can see? As a teacher, is there something I can see? Is there, if I'm a friend, what do I look for that will tell me this child, this adult, and I hear senior citizens are a high rate of risk, too, for suicide. Is that correct?
That is correct. Actually, the senior population has the highest rate of suicide. Okay. So the teens and the elderly have the highest rates. I mean, it can happen to any age, any race, any culture, but when you look at the statistics, teens and those 65 and over have the highest risk. So
is there something is there a telltale sign? Is there a warning that says to me, I need to be in this person and help this person? Is there a sign I need to see?
Yeah, there's many different things to look for. A couple of those things would be looking at if a person is complaining of trouble sleeping too much, if you notice any personality changes, such as loss of interest in things that they normally used to do, So, for instance, if we're talking about a teen and a parent knows that that teenager usually goes out and shoots baskets after school every day, and then all of a sudden you're kind of noticing that they're not doing that, they're becoming more isolative to their room, not hanging out with the friends they normally hang out with, just seeing some of those pretty drastic behavior changes, because losing that interest in those activities sometimes is a telltale sign that maybe depression's going on. Sometimes in teens, we're giving away prized possessions. At school, sometimes you hear about teens cleaning out their locker and carrying things home, and looking at maybe they're daring or risk-taking behaviors. If they're starting to get into trouble, maybe it's a student who didn't used to get in trouble, now all of a sudden they're exuding some risk-taking behaviors, maybe experimenting with substances, having expressions of hopelessness, helplessness.
So the change in the behavior is the biggest sign to that they're thinking of this? Is that what you're telling us?
If you're noticing any of those signs that I mentioned, then it's okay, and it's important to go to that person and say, hey, I've noticed these things in you. Sometimes when these things happen in an individual, it's not uncommon for them to think about wanting to hurt themselves or wanting to end their life. Or have you had those thoughts? Or are you thinking about this?
A lot of children come into their after school and go into their room and stay in there for the rest of the night. Is that probably a sign of something too, also?
Well, if that's what they normally do, and if they're going in and doing things that they like to do, that might not be a sign. But if that's something that they're starting to do, and that's a new behavior, then that could be a sign. That could be something to definitely to look into and ask questions. It's just important to be aware and to not be afraid to ask those very important questions.
Okay. We are going to take a little break, and then we're coming back with our doctor who's going to help us understand how to handle the feelings of shame we have when someone around us has committed suicide. We're talking to Dr. Dave Miers. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. You stay tuned. We're growing. We're empowering you with knowledge every day.
Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. She knew I was going to say that.
And this is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. We are talking a very deep subject today, and thank God we'll have this up on the web. Please download it. Please pass it around. It is about empowering you to deal with the horror called suicide. And we are talking to Dr. Miers. He is the counselor and program development manager for Bryan Medical Center in Lincoln, Nebraska. He's the co-chair of Nebraska State Suicide Prevention Coalition. Thank you for being with us today, Dr. Miers.
Thank you.
Dr. Miers, I know several people who have, and we're talking decades. They carry the shame with them of knowing someone who commits suicide and not stopping it. Knowing someone, having a child who commits suicide is just horrible on the family. And also a parent who commits suicide. I always think suicide is a selfish action. How do you describe the suicide action?
Well, suicide is the research that I've done, and obviously I've followed this topic very closely and have done research myself looking at suicide survivors. And what I've learned from talking with those individuals who have acted out towards themselves with suicidal intentions is described as a very intense psychological pain. When somebody is suicidal, they have those intense feelings and not knowing what to do with them, and feeling like nobody can understand what they're going through. I sometimes characterize it as tunnel vision. You see, the light at the end of the tunnel, and what they see as a way out is suicide, and they don't see the things outside of that tunnel on the sides.
They don't see the family. They don't see the repercussions of their action.
Right.
Okay.
And that's where coming in and asking the question, are you having these feelings? Are you having these thoughts? Tell me about it. Because once that person connects with somebody and feels like that person is gaining an understanding of what they're going through, then that tunnel vision slowly disappears. That person feels connected, and that's where we get them connected into resources. So it's something that it's real, but it's something that we can definitely intervene and connect people with resources, but providing that understanding. But unfortunately, we know that, as I mentioned earlier, there's many lives that are lost every year to suicide, and what that leaves in its wake is the average is about 6 we call suicide survivors for every suicide, and that means a suicide survivor is somebody who has lost somebody to suicide. And today, suicide remains the most common and sudden traumatic loss that communities experience every year. And that loss creates a host of problems for children's families to contend with while they're grieving.
I think the biggest grief would be how come I didn't see it? How come I didn't notice it? I mean, and I find a lot of people wonder, shouldn't I have seen the signal?
And that's a very common thing for families and for loved ones to go through. That's part of that grief experience around suicide, and it's often that folks continually ask the question why, and they're looking for answers, and unfortunately sometimes those answers aren't there. But it's important to know that that individual was going through some very intense.
I like the tunnel thought. I understand the tunnel thought. That clarifies it to me.
Yeah.
Because when you're in a tunnel, you don't often see the sides of the tunnel. You just look straight ahead.
Right.
So that has a great clarity for me. So as someone who has lost someone, who has been devastated by this action, what would you suggest I do to heal?
It's important from talking to suicide survivors. It's very important. What I've learned is that individuals who have lost somebody to suicide, one of the best things that has helped them is to be connected with another individual who has lost somebody to suicide, somebody that understands what they're going through. Here in our community, there's a group called the Ray of Hope support group. So I think it's important for folks to know what resources are in your community, support groups that are for individuals who have lost somebody to suicide. The Ray of Hope group here is a wonderful group. It connects people so that you can start going through that process, connecting with individuals, because it's different. I mean, a death by suicide is different than other deaths, and interviewing family members that I've talked to, they tell me that other people just don't quite understand unless you've lost somebody to suicide. So connecting them with a resource such as the Ray of Hope group. We have a group here in Lincoln called the Local Outreach to Suicide Survivors. Mm-hmm. There's other communities across the United States that have such groups that actually go out to the families and talk to them. And it's a group of folks who have lost individuals to suicide.
I was quite impressed when I was researching for this show is to go to suicide.org. What is your webpage for suicide? We
have several web pages, I think, to connect people to. Suicidology.org is the national, it's the Association of Suicidology. It's the study of suicide prevention. Here in Nebraska, we have suicideprevention.nebraska.edu, and then we have youthsuicideprevention.nebraska.edu. And then there's nelostteam.nebraska.edu. All those websites are full of resources. Individuals who are in crisis or considering having those thoughts, if they have those thoughts of suicide, there's the National Crisis Line, which is 1-800-273-TALK. Mm-hmm. 1-800-273-TALK. That's a very important number for people to know. One
of the things I suggest to people is that they journal their thoughts and feelings. I'm in a tunnel. I don't know that I can trust anybody to talk to. What would you suggest I do to get healthy?
Journaling is a good idea. Exercise is very important. Your nutrition and your sleep. I mean, focusing on those three areas. But the most important thing is if you've had those thoughts, or you're having those thoughts and you're feeling down, is to get connected with somebody, and that could be just going. If you have a family physician, going in and saying, "This this is how I'm feeling. What can I do? That physician can help you get connected. Or going directly to a counselor, to a psychologist.
I like church, by the way.
Or a church.
That's my biggest.
Yep, that's part of that connectedness. Going in and talking to your pastor, your spiritual leader, somebody who you can reach out to and connect with is very, very important. If it's a crisis, though, if you're feeling like you have a plan and this is what I want to do, then it's important to get that person into the nearest emergency room as soon as you can.
Okay. One of the things that I tell everyone is that our breath is our extension with God and our life. And so I honor the body as the vehicle of God. And that is where I come from. And this whole thing seems so strange to me, yet I've seen the devastation it's happened to everybody else. So I want to thank you immensely for being with us. Is there any last words you want to talk about before we let you go?
I just think it's very important to continue to talk about this topic, to bring it up if you're concerned about somebody, to confront that person, in an understanding way and a comforting way, and to let them know that you're there to help and you can help them get connected with resources that will help them.
I think people, when they just hear the word suicide, want to hide. They don't. I did I do appearances, and a woman came to me, and I said to her, your son is thinking of suicide. Please go home and talk to him. They wrote me a nasty letter, and then they came back and thanked me. But I got the nasty letter first, unfortunately.
Sure.
But the whole word is too darn scary.
It is very scary, and it's something that individuals just want to. It's sometimes so scary that people just want to walk the other way. And that's unfortunate, but it's one of those things that to confront it, to talk about it, that's the best thing that we can do.
Okay. So to face your fears and move through it and communicate is the way we survive. Is that what you're telling us?
Yes. Communicate, to work with our communities, to connect our schools, our churches, providing suicide prevention education programs. Those are all very important things. There's a lot of different educational programs that we can provide in our schools and in our communities, and I think it's important to find out what those are, what your community has to offer. There's QPR programs, which is question, persuade, refer. There's the assist program. There's a lot of different programs.
Okay. Well, one of my earlier guests, we talked about fear, and he used an acronym, I can't even say that word, that fear is faithless emotion appearing real. And I feel as though when they're in suicide, my friend tells me there's no faith. So I get the faith. That's what I can say. Thank you, Dr. Miers, for being with us. Again, you are the head of, or the co-chair of the Nebraska State Suicide Prevention Coalition. Is there a phone number for you that they can call?
They can call go to our website, the suicideprevention.nebraska.edu, and they can go to bryanlgh.org. That's another thing I wanted to quickly mention, is that we have online depression and anxiety screenings. It's free, confidential. That's another way that folks can go in and see, do I have a possible signs and symptoms of those disorders that treatment is available for.
Thank you again for being with us. God bless you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. Please stay tuned. We have more for you, your calls. Join us on PsychicSuzanna.com or Life with Psychic Suzanna on Facebook. You'll find out all the great people coming up on the show. Yes, this is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. You're right where you need to be. This is the place where we're going to find answers to making you happy every single time we're on air. You can find us on 1110 KFAB. You can also find us on PsychicSuzanna.com, where you get a free question. Please join us on Life with Psychic Suzanna on Facebook. That's where you get an insight on who's coming up every week you get the inside scoop of that. Also, please join us at Susanna Stickney. Then you get to find out what I'm doing and maybe join me in my intentions. I try to put out a thought that we could contemplate to maybe make our better day a little bit better. I need you to understand that there is oodles and oodles and oodles of reasons for us to be depressed. If you want to be depressed, if you want to be unhappy, no matter how much you love God, no matter what, you can always find a reason. The important thing is to find the good in life. And so I suggest to all of my clients, everybody who sees me, that the first 5 minutes of each day, you don't turn on the TV, you don't turn on the radio, although Gary's listening for you. What you do is start with an attitude of gratitude. You open your eyes and you say, you know what, I can breathe. I open my eyes and I can see. There are so many things that you start your morning with an attitude of gratitude. And as you do that, you are setting the stage for your day. And did you know that the last 15 minutes of your last half an hour before you go to bed, whatever you're thinking about, you take to bed with you. And for the next 6 to 8 hours, it ruminates in your mind and grows bigger. So it's so important to, before you go to bed, try not to watch violence. Try to put on something that is positive and go to bed with peace in your heart and joy in your heart and looking forward to some great things ahead. And maybe start thanking God for the great day you had. And even if you had a problem with a relative or a family member, thank God that they're in your life because they provide you with a lesson in learning and growing. So it's all about looking for the good in everything. And that's what's on the back of my card. And I want you to work with it. And I want you to choose life because as long as you're breathing, you have the opportunity to make everything better. You have the opportunity to improve with each breath you take. So yesterday's problems don't have control over you in today. You grow, you get better. So if you feel like you're against the wall, look for the window, look for the door. It's there. And before we go to the phones, by the way, we're going to take your calls at 558-1-800-543-1110. 558-1110 or 1-800-543-1110, and we'll take your calls in a few minutes. Also, I want to talk a little bit about, with Jim, May 22nd, the worst tornado in U.S. history struck Joplin, Missouri. I used to do radio in Joplin. Great people down there.
Okay. Yep.
And have you seen the pictures on TV?
I have seen a few, yep.
Can you not just think the attitude of gratitude that we're above the ground and we've got a roof over our head? Amazing. I mean, how do you come from that? Mm-hmm. But we have a thing called the Convoy of Hope.
Yep, the old Convoy of Hope.
Convoy.
Yep.
Convey.
Yep.
I got to get that right. And the Convoy of Hope has served over 43 million people worldwide, and right now it's serving Joplin. Now you can provide disaster relief by texting Convoy, CONVOY, to 50555. And that makes a $10 donation. Or you can go to the KFAB website and you can type in Joplin. And that'll take you to a place where you can make a donation. No matter how bad our problems are today, no matter how we're looking for and worried about the electric bills, or what we're worried about in the next moment, so many have it so worse. So if you can reach out and help someone with $10 donation by texting Convoy 50555, that's a $10 donation. What a blessing that would be to somebody. So reach out, help somebody, and you'll find as you help others, it helps you better. As Dr. Miers says, get connected. Get connected. There's a lot more people with a lot more going on in their life in worse ways. So attitude of gratitude, and connect with others. Now, your calls, 558-1110 or 1-800-543-1110. By the way, at 8:30,